Good? You're live? We're recording? Okay, welcome everyone. Let it be stated for the record that the board met in executive session to consider discussions regarding proposed pending or current litigation and matters leading to the appointment or employment of a particular person or persons. And again, welcome. We will start our meeting as we always do with a pledge of allegiance. The flag is over there. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start with an action item, the approval of our minutes from October 8th. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions about those minutes? Okay, all in favor of approval? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. We move on to the report from our superintendent, Dr. Girizzo. Okay.
Okay, welcome. Welcome, everybody. A few updates from what's been going on over the past couple of weeks. Chromebooks, we've been monitoring their distribution. The distribution K4 is almost complete, or probably within a couple of days of that. Our search for an assistant director for special education, we received about, I think it was exactly 60 applications for the position. Screenings were wrapped up today. There were 22 of those candidates screened. They'll be set up, usually it's about 6 candidates there. I think the screening team is working through those. That will go to committee the week of the 2nd. We'll have semifinalists come and meet with Dr. Z and I, and then we'll bring finalists to the board for consideration. Conference day is teed up for November 3rd. We are the focus of that conference day with our teachers will be both a combination of in-person and online work, and it'll be about bolstering our efforts in online learning through our collaboration with Roberta Kang and Columbia University. And then the second important part of that day will be a focus on wellness. Fourthly, I wanted to, you probably also saw my email today. Congratulations to Sophie Blumenthal and Kate Wesley Jones, our valedictorian and salutatorian. 2 years in a row, we've got 2 women in the top 2 spots, and I think that's pretty cool. Both are Seacliff grads this year. The HEPA fundraising through the Viking Foundation is, my understanding, is about $5,000 away from meeting their goal, is what I learned. The website shows a little bit less, but that's probably because there are some checks that haven't cleared. So you will see on the agenda tonight a check from the foundation, which they provided to us on Tuesday when we did the revised agenda, in the amount of $110,000. It is a miraculous and a very impressive accomplishment that they achieved. Over the past couple of days, they've raised quite a bit more money. And so we were in touch with the vendors today. When we talked to the owner of the company, he indicated to us that he was waiting on several orders today, ranging from the range of a 3,000 unit order to a 300,000 unit order. And I begged him to put ours in the queue before those came in, which he agreed to do. And so we'll have, if the board accepts the donation this evening, my suggestion would be to fund the $5,000 out of our COVID code. It'll get reimbursed when the funding is complete, and we can get those orders. And originally we were thinking 4 to 7 weeks. It might actually be sooner than that. So thank you to the Viking Foundation and Lisa Cashman, who has really driven this in a remarkable way. So thank you to all of them. The bond, the phase one of the bond, which focuses on the middle school, primarily the middle school, the safety and security projects at all of the elementaries, has been submitted to State Ed on Friday. Of that, the sum total of the value of those, all those projects is 18.4 million. 15.2 is planned to be expensed through the actual bond, 2.3 million, 2.37 million through the capital reserve, and 822,000 through the general fund. We're seeing, when I checked in with the architects yesterday on this, they shared with me that they were cautiously optimistic that we might get some real feedback within 4 to 6 weeks, which is fast. Because if you think back a year or two ago, the Q4 mechanical reviews were 30 weeks. So, and this is regular review. This is an expedited review. So that's, so we'll keep an eye on that. We're thinking maybe mid-November. And what I thought we would do is, since the board hasn't, the last time you were with the architects, I think it was over the summer, that we would bring the architects back to meet with you again in November to give you an update on the status of where things are and timing and next steps. And this will be likely going out to bid in probably January. So I'll keep you posted on that. We've spoken a little bit about, not a little bit, but a lot about surveys. Those of you who are parents in the district will have seen that we put the parent surveys out last night for how we're doing with our reopening. Teachers will get their links tomorrow, and students in grades 2 through 12 will get their links starting next week. And so we'll have all that survey data to inform our work. Mr. Contreras and I have spoken extensively about the asynchronous days. We know that they remain problematic, and we're trying to figure out where the sweet spot is in making those days be, not big time sucks for a screen, homework. We're trying to figure out how to make that better. So we're hopeful that the survey data will help inform our path forward on that. And so within the next couple of weeks, we should have some more clarity. Committees. So policy committee is scheduled for the end of October 29. Don Lang and I had a meeting a couple of days ago to get the athletic advisory motion. We should have that off the grounds in the next week or two. Teaching and learning will begin the week of November 2. Equity and excellence committee will get off the ground, and social emotional learning will be off to the races probably mid-November. So everything is coming together. Intramurals are now moving into sports-specific intramural. Kids are having a great time. And yesterday we had our Unity Day, which is, I don't know if you saw some of the lawn signs that are out. Unity Day is about inclusion and kindness and good character. It's also, and there were lots of really cool and fun things happening throughout the district. So those are kind of the happenings. We had the, as you know, we had the car chase this week down Glen Cove Avenue. That remains an open investigation. I do not believe any arrests have been made yet, but I will keep you and the community posted on where we are with that. And that's that will conclude my report for this evening. Oh, and I welcome our principals for being here tonight. I can't see you. There you are. They're going to meet with us tonight and talk with us about our reopening.
That's great. Thank you. You covered a lot very succinctly, Peter. Thank you. Can you? There was a news article that made it a little unclear. Can you just clarify for once and for all that the car chase, no one ever entered our buildings?
No.
Okay.
No. What ended up happening was the way we understand that to have unfolded is originally we thought it was a stolen car. And then there is some suspicion that it was the 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 bad guys who were on somebody's property within the district boundaries. The police were called, and that's where the chase ensued. They were being chased down Glen Cove Avenue, and for whatever curious reason, they turned into a school, which is odd considering that schools generally dead end. But that's what they did. And so when they got down towards the back where the fields are, there were two males in the car. One, as the car slowed down, one jumped out and ran towards the golf course. The police officer went on foot to try to apprehend that person. And while that was happening, the other person drove away. So they kind of dispersed. And I think the police and our team suspect that they were long gone from North Shore reasonably quickly. But nobody ever entered the school. We had, my understanding is there were about 30, 40 kids who were up at the middle school by the library, and our staff did a really great job of bringing them in, super quickly, and then we brought the whole school, the whole district, into lockouts. We went about a normal day, and within the building, but nobody was out. You're welcome.
It was unusual, but I think the procedures went as they're supposed to.
They did, and the principals and teachers really responded beautifully. I was really, really pleased.
That's great. We now turn it over to our SGO reps. I hope you guys have something equally exciting to detail for us.
You have a car chase?
Yeah, I don't think I can.
That's good.
Just make sure your lights on and talk directly into the mic because we want to have captured for the people out there.
Is it good? You hear me?
I
no?
think so.
Well, you hear me now?
That's
Better?
much
Okay.
better. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So, firstly, we established that Ariadne and I will be serving as the SGO presidents for the year. As far as the other candidates, they each recorded their respective speeches via Google Meet, and those speeches will be sent out through email to all students, and they'll get a link to vote on Monday. And this week was also Spirit Week. Tomorrow's the last day. It's Decade Day. The past 2 days were Maroon and White Day and Cowboy Day, Country Day. And participation was varied, but we saw some good school spirit. And in the upcoming weeks, we want to explore the possibility of maybe decorating parts of the school for events and holidays, and brainstorm some safe COVID-friendly fundraisers possibly, now that we have a succinct student government. So yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. So one of our main goals this year is to try our best to find ways to make all of the regular North Shore traditions safer and more COVID friendly. We really want to do everything we can to make this year as normal as possible, especially for the seniors who seem to have it a little bit worse this year. We're trying to take advantage of every opportunity we can, so our senior year experience is as normal as possible. The yearbook team is working really hard to make an amazing yearbook, and we've already distributed senior clothing to all the seniors, so we've had 2 rounds of orders. And yeah, we're working on making senior year the best it can be based on the circumstances. So that's where we're at right now at the high school.
All right. Thanks again to both of you. Much appreciated. Take care. With that, we move on to our regular business. We are going to have a bit of a shuffling of our positions. The trustees will slowly exit off to the sides carefully. And then our 5 building principals will come up and Green will come down. It's very exciting. Very exciting night.
Principals are going to stay where they are for now. You guys stay where you are.
Oh, it's gonna get dark.
We're going to start with 3 short videos for elementary, middle, high school. This group, watch, see how the results start. Let's start with thank you for we'll head back up on.
Good morning. Welcome to North Shore Middle School. Students arrive every morning and they take their temperatures at a risk scanning location. There are several areas located throughout the campus. Students arrive to school either by drop-off in one of our 2 circles, they ride their bikes, they walk, or they get dropped off by a bus. Students wait outside and enter the building at 7:45 in the morning. Being outside has been critical to our success as a school so far this year. In fact, students and teachers alike comment that they love being outside and wish that this is something we can continue moving forward with in the future. Students are outside for an hour for lunch and recess, in addition to wellness and brain break. Academic classes continue to bring students outside and plan meaningful lessons that will move the curriculum forward. While the physical classroom space looks different this year, teachers continue to provide experiences that challenge students to develop as thinkers, communicators, problem solvers, collaborators, innovators, and committed individuals. Through hands-on learning experiences,
I guess you look happier, you do. My friends told me one day I'll feel super size of me. Your words, your habit, your power. We are the super size, super.
faculty and staff continue to have team meeting time, some department planning time during the day, as well as our student support team that meetings to discuss concerns related to students. Our 6 dismissal waves begin at 2:35 in the afternoon. Approximately every 2 or 3 minutes, a different wave of the building is announced. Students exit their classroom in a socially distanced manner and head outside to be picked up by a parent, ride their bike home, walk home, or take a bus.
So what took place here is crime scene.
Because the past is just a goodbye. Teach the children well. Their fathers have it's slowly gone.
Okay, so, what I thought we would do is, if there was anything that we wanted to do, stop, we can give you each an opportunity to say a word or two, and we jump right into, questions from the board, or we can just go right to, board reactions, and we can go to that. Turn it right over to the board, and then let you guys. Me, that's probably better, right? Okay. Sorry, okay.
So again, thank you very much for that presentation. I only heard it from the people sitting on my side of the auditorium, but frankly, it's emotional for us, seeing these kids in school, like more than anything else. Mask, cleaning everything. What we just saw was school. Like, we saw our kids in school, our kids learning. So, and like music and interacting, and being physical, and adapting. So it was really a pleasure just to see that. That's it. I'm going to hand it off to whichever trustee wants to jump in. Please.
It's hard to hear.
The college thing, when we look back only a few months, we were so anxious and, the adults in the room planning for them. Worrying how much these kids are doing. And you probably see this every day. Resilience, they have grit, they're happy school, they're happy to. And staff is so good to see. Thank you for giving them that space to be out of the box. Still thinking about that middle school. How do you, everything. No way. That's beautiful. I mean, to me, the point was, why is it really emotional? For that, it was, I think I really appreciate people who have like a community and see what it's really looks like in some sense. I don't doubt at all that it was vulnerable. Watch them, what you were. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I was curious, especially given the new requirements that we have for airborne transition. We wanted to assume they're knowing that the sleep was important, that not was important. And now we have this new guidance that says, well, actually, it's really important. It's not enough. Really need to live around indoors. Probably have to become more set up during the winter. And I think you guys have been really I'm curious that a couple of things I guess. Like, how far is maintaining this day-to-day, how far is after finding this village, and is there anything that you can do and you that will make your job? I know there's
I can talk about the middle school. So, Howard, we've got 46 classrooms. Everyone is desks or 6 feet apart. Students in those desks for the day. But teachers are finding really creative ways to get to collaborate while maintaining that. So they're doing that by bringing kids outside for classes. And they're also using technology really creatively in that collaboration, even while we have to be. You certainly saw in the video, one of the clips was a wiring class that had left, and the students, their desks were facing one another, right? So we positioned the desk where they were likely not to teach one. So we are trying to find ways can do some activities, but humans speaking who we are, we do that. We do understand that it's important to maintain that 6 feet apart. So teachers are really creatively, we're still having turn and talks. I have Bridget's here, here will be a group of 4, right? You just said now turn and talk to your partner. Now we can still stay in our seats. So the 6 feet, I don't think it's not hard to maintain for students. The expectation is less fast, they're seat in the classroom. I think what's challenging for teachers is how to do all of the great collaborative things that we want to do in a socially distanced way, and when to make those educational concessions or those instructional concessions that the living environment classes I'm going to have next to each other while they're at a beaker station. So I think it's not hard for kids to do necessarily. It's hard to juggle and make that decision of when can I bring kids close together to do things.
I just ask everyone to keep their mic. Trustee Galati is having hearing and the public is having hearing. I don't know if it's the sound system, but I guess it will be better if more mics might be helpful. Thank you.
So I will speak to the high school. And so one of the advantages, so at the high school, students go from class to class. And so I'll talk about, as far as mask and distancing, some of the things that have really worked well are, I spent the first few weeks making daily reminder announcements. I almost sounded like in the subway trains. But I thought that repetitive messaging was really important. And kids actually would tell me, I repeat the message back to me, right? Mask covering, mouth and face, it's not just dangling off the nose. Making sure your desks are clean and walking to the right of the hallway. One of the things that I'm grateful for are the resources from the district. So we have additional monitors that have been placed at key areas that negotiate traffic. One of the advantages that we do have as they move from class to half is only half the students are there. So it'd be very difficult. It's challenging. They need reminders as it is as they move from class to class because they're teenagers and they want to walk side by side. So they need ongoing reminders to tell them, please try to create some distance. And the monitors have been doing that. The ongoing reminders are helpful, and I think we have to keep doing them throughout the year. The other thing that has been very helpful, or we have, one of the things I wanted to promise students is that the mask break was never going to be further than the bathroom break. And actually, it's actually closer than every bathroom. So in every wing, S wing, J wing, the high school, in the music wing, every wing has a mask break. There's mask breaks, and then we couple the mask breaks under tents so that they can take a mask break under if there's inclement weather. And then we combine the coupling of the tent, outdoor tent, and then we do the circles that you're familiar with. So students go outside, never further than the bathroom, and they really have utilized the mask break. And I think having the outlets for the mask breaks under tents, under circles, even if it rains, has allowed students to really follow the rule about the mask indoors. So students have been really good with wearing the mask indoors. And I think we frequently think of teenagers as being challenging with following rules. And I have found the contrary. I have found teenagers are actually following the rules. I sometimes have to remind adults, right? Like that's the work is adults, teenagers. But they have been, people have been really good in general across all ages, and they need ongoing reminders. The other thing is we've been doing, one of the things you didn't see in the high school pieces, many of the humanities classes have been going outdoors, sitting under the social circles. I thought it'd be creative to show you the lab classes because I wanted to show you that we maintain some of our creativity. Lab classes do require highly specialized equipment and they have to be inside, but the humanities classes are going outdoors, as are all phys ed classes. And when they go outdoors, the district has also been gracious. Thank you for all of you. Olivia, we reached out to get the Wi-Fi cards. The teachers from day one have been using them to go outside with different levels of frequency, but they've been able to take the Wi-Fi card and go outside. And the other part that you didn't see is, I would say more than half of our students actually lunch outside. We created a great pattern. At first I had mixed seating. I found that wasn't really working that well. We created a great pattern outside of the tents. Jerry and the custodial staff have been nothing short of amazing. I would ask for the great pattern the next day it was set up. So the area of concern is how far can I take the outdoor eating before it gets too cold. I do think that going back to the resiliency piece, I think we can carry it at least another month. And we've been lucky to have good weather. Even when it rains, they go outside because we put the tents together and tie them together and weight them down. So even when it's raining, they do go outside. But that's been tents, outdoor circles, outdoor classes, outdoor learning. Half the kids have been really helpful. Monitors and ongoing announcements over the PA system on a daily basis. And when I don't do them, people actually today, they said you need to go back and do them every day. So that the combination of all those things has been supportive. People need ongoing reminders, but I think overall people have been good about following the directives when they're reminded.
So something, I think that, can you hear me? The kids are resilient, right? And I think that's amazing, right? It's very emotional. Really, the wearing of the mask is just, they're fine with it. They really are. I mean, a lot of the parents are so worried about it leading up to it. They're absolutely fine. And very need reminders or need lessons. We're handling that really carefully as parents and kids. I think that our service providers, as part, they can have a triangle or a square, and have a conversation, and do their guided reading, and things like that. I have part of my cafeteria set up that way, be a part. It's just been really creative. One thing that I think we help with, as we do have to go inside, I think it's what we just going to challenge. Because we're not encouraging sharing of any materials at all. So finding something that kids can do at their desk alone, but the social skills, so like a game that they can play or something that they can play at their desk so they're still 6 feet apart when they're having indoor recess, but still somehow be social. We're really investigating right now. That's what I'm looking to do. A shared decision-making committee is working on that. We asked for a wish list from parents for donations, but we really are trying to think of how to have kids engaged in something fun and social while inside.
Bridget, can I just ask a quick question? Do you believe that's gonna add another layer of supervision on your work?
For us, it's the same model. One monitor is one more program. I'm still short. Monitors, but I have one. Yes, we do.
I'd like to add on to that. So we interrupt, just the same topic. We have been very fortunate at the middle school. We are outside at lunch recess. Every kid has an hour a day for lunch recess combined. And I believe it might be 4, maybe 3 days total. Kids have been inside for lunch and recess due to the bad weather. When that happens, however, right, so I've got 16 classes now on a grade level. And when you've got 200 kids or 150 kids outside, it's easier, believe it or not, because they're all in one visual space for 8 or 10 monitors, security guards, principals, and assistant principals to observe everyone. When they're in those 16 classrooms, I've got now 8 monitors divided amongst the building for those 16. I don't have one-to-one supervision indoors. So that is, to think that we could have 46 monitors is unrealistic, not reasonable. So what we have been doing is for that 5-minute passing time that teachers have to go from class to class, and also for indoor lunch recess, we have assigned to a particular monitor, depending on the period, anywhere from 2 to 4 classrooms that are in the same geographic area. So that monitor will go to room, let's say 97, 98, 99, 100. So they're all in one area at the end of the hall, and they'll bounce back and forth. And for the 5-minute passing time, I'm less concerned. It's when you've got an hour of kids inside that we really just want to make sure that they're supervised. So we bring in substitute teachers when we need to. Mr. Nelson and I are very, very visible in the building on rainy days. But that is an area that I know is a concern for people.
I would just like to. Can you hear? Yes. I would like a little bit. It changes the scope. Okay. I just would like to piggyback off of a couple of things that Finder said. First of which is our students really, really, truly have been an incredible group of children to watch at the elementary school. They come in with joy. They have been nothing but happy to be back at school. And our parents have been really, truly supportive of our efforts as we try to maintain our social distancing, follow safety procedures throughout the course of the day. One thing I'd like to thank Dr. Z and Regina for is their commitment to professional development, because that's really been beneficial for our teachers, particularly at the elementary level. So much of our delivery of instruction has been based on one of our collaboration and the importance of that. And now, since that has really shifted with 6 feet and barriers and masks, I think it's an incredible testament to our teachers, how they have been able to use their own creativity to adapt. And I do believe that the more that they're able to have time to think about their delivery of instruction, collaborate on that, and share their ideas and see how other places and other folks are adapting, that will only lift and continue to lift shift in what they're doing. And it's incredible to see what they're already doing. And I think the more they're able to collaborate and work together, the better that's going to be.
I'm definitely going to piggyback on what Dr. Rupa just said. The collaborative nature of our faculty is awe-inspiring. Just truly, it's what North Shore is all about. The fact that our faculty has come together to support one another. At a kindergarten meeting today, talking about remote learning, and we mapped out how we're going to support one another and how we can harness some of the tech savviness of some of our older level teachers to help support what remote learning might look like in kindergarten. Really just speaks to the collaborative nature that we're looking to instill in our students through our SPOs. They exemplify that to the nth degree. And I just think our special area teachers having exemplified outdoor learning, have embraced it and work every day outside with our students as a set outdoor learning piece for our students is really just amazing. And they have been resilient, the students, our teachers have been adaptable, and it's just, I really just commend the work and thank the board for that support because it's truly brought a level to learning that's amazing.
Thank you. Sure. Open the question, but you got a lot of great response. Thank you very much. This side of the table of the room.
We're gonna bounce around, right? We're not all asking every question at once, right? Everybody in the district. I'm curious because parents haven't had a chance to be inside the classroom, haven't been able to see the children in action, and it was just beautiful. At one point, I just got lost in it, and I started to well up. It's really special. You know, during the summer, we had so many questions. How are they going to use the bathrooms? How are we going to have lunch? We're never going to be able to have instrument lessons or music lessons. And then there they are, doing all of that in what sort of normal. I mean, it was really beautiful. And of course, watching the video, seeing the spaces filled with children that we got to walk through during the building tour was very, very beautiful. Thank you for looking at it. I know that has been a lot of work and a zillion questions, but I wanted to start with one. All of the research shows the importance and benefit of children being outside in terms of impact on readiness to learn, right? And on the decrease in behavioral problems. And I'm curious if your teachers have noticed that, if you have any data from any evidence that there's less issues discipline-wise, and if you think that's connected at all to physical movement outside.
What I would actually say is having the children outside has been absolutely wonderful. And the feedback from similar to what Mr. Dennis has already shared, that universally we think that that is a piece of the work that we would like to continue as we move forward after this pandemic is over. And to your point, Dr. McCarty, it's certainly something that seeing it in action has certainly registered that it's been positive for our learning community. With that said, I would also suggest that one of the things we're also realizing is a challenge in the cohort model is that if they become these families of 10, 12, and in our larger cohorts of 15, and maintaining that commitment to family over a course of a day. We have our own family that could be challenging, and sometimes within the cohort that can be challenging. And so I'd like to again to our mental health staff, Mr. Doherty, Mr. Preda, for the work that they're doing, because at lunch and recess when our students would be able to interact with a whole class of their grade levels, they're not able to do that right now. And so there's a level of problem solving that we have to work on with our students. And I actually think in the long run, that's a benefit. It's actually going to benefit them in the long run. But we have to come to terms that the
speaking for the high school, so I don't have a baseline, right, for behavioral patterns at the high school, but I will tell you that I have not had incidents, and it's been very calm. The students have been very caring and supportive and kind and followed directives, and I've always believed that students, if you trust them, they trust you back. So part of the trust with the outdoor space is that we're utilizing outdoor space, the circles, the schoolhouse, the Victorian, and part of that, what that conveys, it conveys a trust of movement. And so I feel like I agree with you. It's not just the ambiance of outdoors and the calming effect of being outdoors, but it's also the level of giving trust that then reciprocates back with adolescent trust. So the movement around the campus, the allowance to use, we have this gorgeous campus at the high school. And I think that one of the things that I'm thinking about is how do we maintain post-COVID the use of this gorgeous campus in order to have, I mean, that's why when students tell you they go from high school to college, like suddenly I feel a certain level of freedom and trust is because they use the space. They go from class to class outdoors, professors meet outdoors. And I think that one of the things to your question is we should continue this work outdoors as much as possible going forward. I will support eating lunch outside post-COVID going forward. I want to get another ping pong table at some point post-COVID. I think that fun activities during recess, during high school recess, which is the lunch period or the free period, is something that perhaps in the race to get the 5s on AP exams and the high grade, the 7s on IB exams, we sometimes have gotten lost in the chase for the grade and forgotten the beauty of just being in the moment of learning outside of a physical classroom. And I think this has reminded us that maybe we should stop doing that a little bit sometimes and maybe build citizenship through those open air conversations. And I'll tell you the other thing it does when students are outdoor eating during non-class time, they see other kids in circles in classes and it creates a culture of learning even when you're not in a class. So you're surrounded by open learning throughout the day, and that's been nice to see.
At the middle school level, I certainly don't have data to support that outdoor learning is creating a decrease in behavioral incidents. But I will say that kids enjoy being outside. And it's a guaranteed experience every day for an hour of lunch, half-hour brain break, the half-hour of wellness, and many other academic classes, depending on your classes, outside the day, et cetera. What I will say, though, it touches upon your question about discipline, is because at the middle school level, kids are in the classroom all day long with 12 other 13-year-olds. That poses its own problem. So we still have that kind of typical middle school behavior, middle school consequences. We still have that going on, and I would certainly don't want to make this assumption or inference, but I would wonder if it's happening a little bit more now because we're in one space all day with all the same students. We are working on that. Our wellness teachers, like Dr. said, our counselors, social workers, psychologists, they all play a very big role in wellness classes. They all teach a wellness class. The 3 squad is very important to us at the middle school, right? It's now 15 minutes every day in the morning. So we are working on ensuring that when you do have a verbal confrontation, a verbal conflict with a student, and now you have to see them for 7 hours, how can you go about your day still respectfully, peacefully, and respectfully disagree with someone, not resort to insults, walk away from a problem, etc.
I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm so glad to hear you after learning post-COVID. And I think tonight we should talk a little bit about also how to learn and what important to for outdoor learning. But first, I do want to thank all of make this happen. And I know you were instrumental and inspiring to your staff. And everyone I talked to, from your staff, students, the parents are all in awe of all the work that you have done and how smooth the opening of school was. So you really should take a bow and be congratulated for your efforts to make this look easy. We all know it was not even close to being easy. It was really, really hard. So thank you very, very much. It does sound like we're going to have to look for creative solutions, maybe in conjunction not only with your shared decision committees, but your PTOs. They often want to know what they can do to make our room better. All the outside stuff, like tables, and that was raised by the PTO. I'm wondering if we could look into some sort of outdoor heaters. So, in case the restaurants, they have them, would it be possible to put banners? So I would like to look into that. And I also want to put it, when you're at college, of course, these kids, they put on their coats and they change classrooms at recess, we wrap the kids up and they go out. Would it be a problem if they were appropriately attired to go outside, right? In a way, because they can, kids don't feel cold the way we feel cold. So I think it's going to be trial and error, but I think we need to look at what we could do to extend it and all kind of pray for a mild winter.
Bridget and I spent some time on this case.
So one of the questions that keeps coming up is what is the temperature that we are going to allow kids to go outside? And for recess, they go outside when it's 20 degrees with the wind chill. And that sounds freezing, but they go outside and they're outside. Last year it was 25 minutes, now it would be 30 minutes. But that's different because they're moving, and physical education class is when they're moving, they're moving around also. So I think, this is my belief, that I think that phys ed could be outside for most of the year, depending on, as long as the ground isn't wet or slippery or there's no precipitation. And I think the phys ed teachers would really like that. They really like being outside. I think they all agree. I think it's really important that what I've been doing is checking in with the teachers who are doing the teaching outside each morning. Because there could be, I don't want to say 60 degrees and lower, we're inside, because it could be a 59-degree day with the sun, out, and it could be warmer than, it just really depends on the conditions. So are the grounds wet? My art class is outside on those concrete tables. She doesn't care if they're wet. She'll work around it. My art teacher, she's great. So I think that we have to kind of lean into the teachers and let them use their discretion and talk to them and just keep communicating with them about what they need and what will help them stay outside longer. I don't really think that we should come up with a temperature to make the decision. I think we have to take each day as it comes. But I do see that they could probably go outside on for some of the activities. Definitely lunch, recess, and phys ed. And then I have, we have somewhat of an enclosed area and there's no wind, it's warmer. So I've been letting the teachers make their own decision, and we've only been inside a few times because of the rain, really, not the temperature, obviously, yet.
I would think that, yeah.
I just want to piggyback on the elementary portion of this. I think one thing that might be important is if the exploration of using outdoor learning for specials, like art or music for students and teachers might be more sedentary, could be a good trade-off to look at how can we incorporate movement in other pieces of the day. So while art might take place in the classroom, it's a little bit controlled. What other opportunities could we explore for students outside, maybe extra recess or a movement break, so that there's opportunities for them to be outdoors, to move around, even though it's still cold, in that fashion that we would expect for phys ed or for recess, to get them out and have their classes. So there is a trade-off where we're going to explore some of those options.
I think a conversation that's important to have, and I really want to make actually talk with my staff about is the notion of outdoor learning versus outdoor time. They're two completely different things. I think, in December and January, we can, middle school lunch recess is an hour. Is the entire hour going to be outside? I'm not positive, right? But certainly a lot of it can be. The brain break periods for grades 7 and 8 can be outside. The wellness class, that's very similar to phys ed, that can be, because that's time where they're moving and they're not required to be focused on one task. I don't know how realistic it will be to have an algebra class outside when it's very cold out, because you're kind of in survival and cold, I can't concentrate, all that kind of stuff. So I think that we're committed to being outside as frequently as possible, but I think looking at that notion of outdoor learning versus outdoor time is different.
I think more about outdoor time.
Yeah.
More ways to make it possible for them to be outdoor time until weather becomes climate. That's a good distinction as opposed to outdoor learning. And I think as we go up right on the scale, in middle school and high school, it's harder to do outdoor learning because you just physically need your stuff.
Right, you need to check
Or you need your science lab, it gets harder.
I would like to also piggyback off of what Dennis is saying. Certainly at the elementary school, we are working to balance that in terms of outdoor time, outdoor learning, but also with an understanding that our students have come back to us that month with a COVID-5, and how can we support them to move them forward. And to Mr. Dennis's point, it's important to understand that yes, we can wrap our students up, we do want them to take care, but there is a discomfort that could hinder some of that learning. So again, this new territory, working through it, trying to balance that with our priority, but also trying to move them in the appropriate direction.
So, Peter, I just remembered one of the things that we talked about today, Dr. Jervis, for example, even if it's drizzling outside, there are teachers who still want to go outside. So I have a kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Fiorello, beloved. She said to me, I know it's raining, but I really want to take them outside. I want to take them on a rain walk. And she took them outside when it was drizzling so she could teach them about what changes when water hits it, what changes in the, outside in the environment when it rains. So that's an example of me, if I had shut that down and said, oh, it's raining out, we're not doing anything outside today, then that learning wouldn't have happened. So, teachers are, they're making the decisions, and I think we have to just trust them to make those decisions.
And I hope tonight, that the board supports you giving them permission to do that. You're all supportive of outdoor learning, going out in the drizzle, going out in snow, getting wet, and getting dirty, and enjoying what nature has to offer, even when it's inclement. So, thank you.
Sure.
I just want to say, I really appreciate how much thought you guys are obviously already putting into the challenge of winter. I mean, somewhat miraculous that that's the challenge that we're looking at, right? Going very well. And so now we have these new challenges, now what do we do about winter? On the one hand, I think we're fortunate that there are now some quite sophisticated models that we can use about how much time it is safe to spend indoors, right? The indoor air quality experts have created very sophisticated spreadsheets where you can see price of wind, the air exchanges you're getting per hour, the infectious rates in your community, and then whether you're in mastermind and all of these variables to calculate how long you can be inside. So that's the good news. There's a good work culture. You absolutely have to be inside for even 5 hours in all likelihood without having a rate of spread, particularly now with the transition, which makes winter all the more challenging. So I am
very interested in what we can do to support you guys. I got some very interesting data. You know, wind turbines, for example, which we're going to protect the area, like if you can block the wind, the temperature will feel as much as 8 degrees warmer than it is. Like, where can we put it? Can we change the top of the canopy to a material that would amplify the sun rather than block the sun, right? We're shady and cool, but we could possibly repurpose them so they made it warmer outside. And right with this goal of at minimum, we want to get kids outside when they need to get them outside. We know the transmission data is in a lot of ways. But when you combine it with these other models of how small a group of people can be in the same space together for the period of time, it starts to look like we've got different so we very much like to support those efforts.
We can keep going around. I want to make sure Tim and Rich, if you want to jump in.
I just want to thank everybody for the work they've done. Unfortunately, the audio has been not cooperating, so most of what's been said I haven't been able to hear.
Okay, I think I'm like right up here with the mic, so the little fuzzy thing off helps at all, but I think I sound pretty conversationally audible.
I can just about hear you. The only person throughout the entire discussion that I could hear clearly was Mr. Contreras.
And I actually had the same complaint from a parent that they don't hear. I don't know where that was located. There's some sort of acoustics on the stage. I have no idea.
I did text Elliot during the time, and he's been trying to make adjustments, but he said it's really beyond what he can do.
If we turned up the volume on our individual mics, would that make a difference on you?
You're much better now, Dave, than you were.
Okay. I just fiddle with the volume button. So,
I'm at volume 10 now.
okay.
I am as well. Is that better, Rich?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So if you could just start from the beginning again?
Okay, so let's keep going. Trustee, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and just to reiterate what everybody else has been saying, we really appreciate the work you've been doing and understand how creative you have to be, and also just the organization that it requires. Just have a couple of questions. I guess one is just specifically for the high school, Mr. Contreras, and that is what sort of feedback you've been getting on the Friday synchronous days, the feedback you've been getting from students in particular, and then also on the asynchronous days, both from teachers and students, and whether they're considering any adjustments or the staff, the teachers are considering any adjustments with how they're doing things.
So the high school has 3 modalities. It has the 2 in-person days. It has the 3rd Friday live, all in on the bell schedule, teacher and students live, and has the 2 asynchronous days. And I think that in that order, actually I would say the 2 live, the Friday, and the asynchronous, most successful to most challenging. You saw images and videos of the 2 days live, and you can see that for all intents and purposes, we've maintained a very dynamic learning environment on those days. I've been meeting with the new teachers, and I also have a hybrid learning committee that I meet with. Fridays, I talk to students, I'm up and about, I'm walking the hallways, all those talking to students, asking them how it's going. We're gonna disaggregate the surveys. The Fridays, I explained to people that the Friday gives us, if we were to throw in Friday as a live day, every 2 weeks we would get 5 live days. This model gives us 6, so you get 2 more live days a month, which gives us at least 10 to 15 more days of content. So you have more live days. What I hear from the Fridays are the teachers have adjusted well to it. Most students have as well, but there's digital exhaustion, and students sitting in front of a screen all day, whether it's watching a live feed, or in this case, a little bit more interactive because they're not fishbowling like they would with a live feed. They're actually in, the challenge for the teacher is who's my audience. So on Friday, they have one audience. And the nice part is it brings the 2 halves together, because at this point, students have lost half a year of not being with friends. And now on Fridays, they at least get to see the other half of their peer group. The adjustment for Fridays, my estimation is that we need to shave off 5 minutes for each class and add either 2 20-minute, either double the passing time, quote passing time from 5 to 10 minutes, or aggregate that into 2 20-minute breaks or 1 full 40-minute break. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the survey results to make that adjustment. But by and large, the Fridays have been more successful as far as like being able to bring the group together and having a singular audience the way you do on the 2 live days. And it's actually to the credit of the teachers who are a lot more savvy with digital tools. Their learning curve around integration into Google Classroom, on discussion boards, on overlays to give comments and assessment feedback to students has been nothing short of impressive. The teachers have been amazing in integrating technology. So they have said that the Fridays have given them the space to actually approximate some really interesting discussions with the students. They just need time for breaks. It's exhausting. I actually think it's exhausting for everyone, right? So I think we need to figure out how to slow things down on Fridays by adding breaks. The other positive to the Fridays is if for whatever reason we are closed, whether it's 1 day, 14 days, or a month, the comment I had from a couple of teachers are like, we know exactly how to make it creative, because we have been actively modeling that. So we were at the high school, if we were to say we're closed for 14 days, every day becomes Friday. There's a schema, there's a model, there's a set of tools that are pedagogical that teachers can use that allows them to do that. And they're ready to go. They're not gonna, the learning curve will already be halfway done, if not 100% of the way done. The asynchronous days is the challenge because what's happening is in any blended learning model, we're asking teachers to cover 100% of the Regents AP preparatory curriculum with 60% of the live instructional time. And that is a significant challenge because one of the ways that you can compensate for that is by giving the work on the asynchronous days to keep 5 lessons a week instead of 3 lessons a week. Because an alternative model is 3 lessons a week, and the off day is a supplement of that lesson, but not necessarily additional screen time for the students. So one of the things that has been challenging is that the students have been, I always say our students are, and we've always said they're digital natives, that they are familiar with online tools, but they still require social interaction. So Fridays and the 2 live days create the social interaction. So when you give work without the social interaction, it becomes very challenging for students. So one of the things, there are a number of things that I think we can do, but they are going to require some very honest conversations about, are we going to try to cover 100% of the curriculum and turn around in June and not have all the kids there with us? So I think that there has to be, we have to have some honest conversations about are we okay saying these are 2 units we're not gonna do this year? And we're gonna go slow, in greater depth, and ease the burden of the asynchronous days. And I think that that's a conversation that I'm gonna use I can hypothesize what the surveys are gonna say. But I wanna be honest about what are some things. We can't, you can't fit 100% preparations for terminal exams. You know, what the Regents, the AP exams, the IB exams, with 60%. Nothing will ever substitute brick and mortar live instruction. That's something that I had always believed in, but this is confirmed. So one of them is having the teacher teams figure out what it is that we're going to say we're not going to do that. Having conversations about saying, okay, let's really keep the workload to that 1 hour that I stated, but having conversations about please ensure that. But that also means not covering the 100%. So there are honest trade-offs that I think where I fall in this is like, I believe that the mental health of our students is more important than the outcome on the test this year. We're in a once in a lifetime pandemic. And I think this is a time that we focus on well-being and not coverage of material, but we need to be okay as a community to take that step. So those are revisiting the curriculum and reassessing what the maybe it's not full 1 hour recorded videos or even live videos, because that's also screen time. Maybe it's more a shorter substantive piece of work that connects to that day that's live on the off days, and then on Friday they close the loop with both. But it means that less will be covered.
If I can jump into what Mr. Gutierrez is saying, I think regardless of the model that our particular school district has within the 5 buildings, regardless of the district, there are going to be in every level, in every school district, in every state, like those concessions. We have to have those honest conversations. And while the middle school model is different than the high school model, we are having 30-minute classes in years where we normally have 6th grade math, for example, averages 50 minutes a day in a normal year. It's now 30. Living environment 8 is usually 60 minutes a day. It's now 30. So teachers are working very hard to prioritize everyone matters, and everyone cares, and everyone learns. And I would argue that we're doing that right now in that order, making sure that student wellness is at the center. But we are starting, I know curriculum directors, I was speaking with one of them today, to look at what can we take away from a particular grade level curriculum and plan, hopefully, next year and put it back into this grade level curriculum. Right, so we're really starting, even though it's only October right now, I'm sure we're all really starting to think about not only regression of learning, but what's going to be our recovery plan next year. I think we're all going to have to really take a look at time in our buildings. We're going to have honest conversations, to Mr. Gutierrez's point, with one another, with teachers, with kids, because we have to see what is possible, right? In whatever it's online 2 days a week or a 30-minute, 6th grade math class.
And if I may just bring that down to our elementary level just for a second, I think that is a significant, honest conversation we are going to have. I've had this conversation with some of my 1st grade teachers to look at what impact our home remote learning looked like for our kindergartners. When March through June is a very significant and impactful time on the reading development of our kindergarten students. And so what corrections or course corrections do we have to make with our 1st grade curriculum in order to ensure that our kindergarten students who are now moved to 1st have made those gains that we need them to make in their reading development? And what part of our 1st grade curriculum, and speaking with Ms. Small, can we work together to shift or adjust and move forward so that we can bring our first graders where they need to be. So that those honest conversations are deeply important as we move forward. Sure.
Can I ask a question? Follow up to your question. So we don't even know what's gonna happen with, the regions, or the ELAs or the math, right? So we don't really know and hopefully, what will happen this year is what happened last year, that there'll be some adjustment. State has to take into account what's going on in the reality of the classroom. But with respect to the region, type of courses, I remember when I was studying for the bar exam 150 years ago, you basically had to know the entire New York State code, which could bring your book in with you. But there were topics that were repetitive, that were emphasized, that were on every single bar exam every year. And if something that wasn't, and you learned those well because, and you just prayed for the best of those that you didn't cover as much that were not the essay question, right? So, I mean, is there a way that we can sort of hold that logic for what you're saying, Paris, and what you're saying, Mr. Dennis, that you're not going to be able to cover every topic in the type of detail that you want to, but you can prioritize those that are generally on the Regents exams on a regular basis, and those that are foundational to the next step of learning. Because really, at the end of the day, what any teacher should, whether it's high school or college or law school, have to think, right? So no one expects me 40 years later to remember what I learned in securities law that I don't practice, right? I would never give advice without looking it up. But it trained my mind to think a different way. And I think that's really our goal here. And our district goal is to train these kids how to think, how to research. And we do want the whole child. We don't want to lose the music, the arts, the athletics, all those things. Can't sacrifice that. But something, we're going to have to make choices, like you said. So is there kind of a way, I know you have this committee with experienced teachers to sort of cull through and figure out what is really essential for them moving forward, essential for them to be successful, should the region exams go forward. And is there something we as a district should be doing in terms of advocacy with the state about modifying these exams and suspending at the low levels, the ELAs, the math, that whole reading and smart to me is ridiculous. Reading is developmental. So that's my own personal opinion. But we should be doing something, and how do we do that as a board, as a district, as a community, to advance those efforts?
So, before you answer, I just want to say, Peter wanted to address it also.
Yeah, so just,
Before you start.
So, I'm encroaching on your space, I'm sorry. So, as far as the 3 through 8 regions go, State Association for Superintendents is advocating that they canceled again this year, there just isn't enough time. What we know is that the state New York State has put in for a waiver, or intends to put in a waiver, but they've been told by the federal government that waiver will not be approved right now. And so we are, hoping that if the administration changes on a few weeks or in January, that landscape may shift a little. We're waiting to see what's happening with that. As of right now, there is what we've been told at the state level is there isn't a path forward on the 3 through. As as far as the regents are concerned, there was some buzz that the January regents were going to be canceled. That, we heard that about a week or two ago. It is on the agenda for the board of regents to take up. But we don't have a clear sense of what's going to happen. What we are hearing also is that for the June regions, that the state feels like there's still more time to make that decision. We, as an association, disagree because for the exact reasons that we've all been talking about here, we want to make planful, informed decisions about how to structure the curriculum. So it is important to know now what's happening for June, but it's essential that we know what's happening for January, right? Because we don't have in North Shore, we don't have a lot of students in Central Regions in January, but the ones that do are the ones who are generally our most vulnerable kids. And so we need to know what's going to happen. You know, it's essential that we know what's happening there. So the jury's still out on some of this to a certain extent, but we, you know, it would seem clear what the answers ought to be. But I think any of us who taught at the high school level, yourself included, right, know that as you prepare students for a Regents exam, you know that there's going to probably be, like for social studies, a certain number of questions on the Constitution, a certain number of questions on slavery, a certain number of whatever it is, right? And then the probability of getting a question about something maybe more obscure, you know, teachers know where to look, right? So we could, in terms of compacting and prioritizing what is most important in the curriculum, probably any teacher who teaches a Regents level class or an AP level class knows where those points are. What we need to be able to do as a system is give them the permission to say, no, it's okay. You have to be able to make those decisions as a team and have that be okay from us, and then they'll probably be reticent to let it go, but it will give them the freedom to make some choices about how to use their time. Eric?
I agree, and what I wanted to share that connects with all your comments are that there's been a cascading effect, like a snowballing effect. So last year, for example, if a student was in algebra, and last year they missed half the year of full instruction, so now there's learning loss, and there was no Regents, as there should not have been, right? That was the right call. So now they are in geometry, and in mathematics, there are pieces that become sequential. So now, with less than full instructional models, whatever the models are, they're not fully instructional models right now. Now you're addressing last year's learning loss. But now the state has said, if they have the Regents, now you have to compensate for the learning loss from last year. Address the lack of full instruction this year, and get to the same end line as if you hadn't had the academic loss last year and the reduced instructional time this year. So to your question about advocacy, so just I want to clarify something. I think that the right thing is I tend not to be doctrinal. Like I think like there are middle ground solutions. The state could sit with a committee of teachers and say, these 4 units, like in chemistry, like I know Dr. Galati, we have to know how to balance equations. We have to know basic structures of the atom, like Bohr's model. Like there are things that can't go away. But then there are things that maybe you can say across New York State, these 5 topics this year we're not gonna, or these 3 topics. And we can do that across content areas. The AP, the College Board, my understanding has already gone publicly and stated they plan not to change the test and give a test the way they've done it in the past, which I find irresponsible. Because I think that
Last year, they didn't have a full test, and now they have to have a full test. So I think this is also a year where the College Board should reassess what are some topics, and you know, teachers are very conscientious. They want to do right by children. They want to make sure that if children are going to have an end of year exam, they want to prepare them well and not set them up for failure in that situation. So if the systems that they abide by, whether they be Regents or College Board AP exams, if they were thoughtful in telling teachers early on, these are things, and focus more on the skills. Focus more on analysis, inquiry, making connections, that then you can apply to the content that you did not get, right? So you didn't cover that content, but you have the skills to tackle that content when you get it in a future course. So maybe this is a good time to do that. So the advocacy would be at places like, you know, the College Board that has said, I think already, we're not going to make changes. To the state, my understanding, and I'll speak to Dr. Titone tomorrow on this, is that the IB curriculum has been more responsive. And I'm not advocating for or against. I've only known AP before I came here. But my understanding is that because it's a greater arc of learning, there's greater areas to compensate because it does focus more on the skills over content. So there are areas to address the second order consequences of last year's deficit with instruction and this year's deficit with instruction in a model that is more coherent and over the arc of years versus a course that you sit for and now hold you accountable for topics that should have been covered during learning loss. So I think that it creates an interesting opportunity for advocacy and for asking these agencies to consider doing this across the board for all high schools. And it's easier if all systems know because then you can address the loss of the topics not covered in subsequent courses. It's easier to know the givens now and address them later.
I just wanted to hop on something Rob and Jeanette shared, and to actually share a thought that I have to a question that you had, Ms. Jones, just about what we may need. And while we're talking about this year, I think it's important for us to recognize that as 5 schools, we may need to come to the board next year with looking at how we've had to adapt our curriculum this year. And this Bruce's point, reading is developmental, and we may need additional support in that area to develop our readers next year in a capacity that we haven't been able to do this year because of the changes and adaptations we've had to make to curriculum. So those are already things that we have to start thinking about as we look at tailoring our curriculum for our students and looking at how, when we look at encouraging outside experiences and the transitions that go with that, all of those things chip away a little bit at access to curriculum and time in terms of learning. And so we have to be realistic about that and look at how, as we move forward, the needs that we may need to be able to adjust those things, particularly so our elementary students are armed to be successful in middle school and high school. They're a little bit different cans of worms, and we have to think about them a little differently.
I just wanted to add on to what Dr. Ruffo was saying, because I think, first of all, I do want to say the directors and I have spoken about this. I think you have that sense of openness to modify, and I think we're talking about is contacting the curriculum. I think, though, one thing we are waiting for are the diagnostic information pieces, because I think it's a deeply personal process. What might contact for one group of students might not for others, especially at the elementary level. So it is the combining of learning loss where students are right now. I think the good news is that most of the K-12 standards are more thinking skills oriented now than ever before. In fact, Dr. Smythe and I were talking about this earlier this week about the spiraling of skills in the NGSS and the next generation science standards. How should they use that as a means to diagnose and reteach students might have lost last year in elementary science? So every curriculum functions differently, and it is different at each level. But I know I'm meeting with the Mountain Director tomorrow, and we're talking about the process, how you work with the teachers to contact the curriculum.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you, Dr. Z. I think from the perspective of the board, conveying the values Trustee Russo talked about having graduates of North Shore schools be thinkers, be people who can synthesize the information of the world around them and apply that to whatever task they are faced with in this world is certainly among the top goals we have. But we don't know, as you're telling us, what are realistic parameters or limitations on the nuts and bolts of curriculum delivery, both on what the kids can handle, and what the faculty can handle, and what families can handle. And that's the important feedback I think that we're looking for. One of my questions that I was going to ask, which would have been predicated on a totally different conversation we didn't have, would have been, how do we know that our students are getting the delivery of learning that we expected them? Now I realize, of course, the expectation itself is what we're questioning, and that's a good thing. That's a huge takeaway from this conversation. So I think that what we might want to consider is, with this information, and knowing that we're learning about that as we go, is to have a follow-up to sort of see how it's going, what we're learning, what we've learned about what are realistic expectations for content without sacrificing the larger goals of student thinking, and of course the larger goals that everyone here has put at the center, which is our student wellness and engagement, which we talked about here, that without those pieces, none of the rest of it matters. You sit up there and you can get through the entirety of a Latin 8th grade curriculum, but the kids are not paying attention, not focused, scared, not feeling well, not well rested, plus the faculty, it's not going to work. I think hearing that as well would make a lot of, we do a lot of good.
I think one of the biggest gifts that we can give to teachers right now is the time for collaboration. I know that I'm sure all of us, we have faculty meeting time. I have not held a faculty meeting this year because they're doing things, right, collaborating with their grade level colleagues. Many teachers are teaching new courses for the first time in a long time. So I think it's important to give them that time so that they can synthesize what in this curriculum, what in this map it can be taught in another time when maybe the following school year. What do I really need to prioritize? We made a comment a little bit earlier about kindergarten students, right? And what did they lose in terms of reading? I think about my kindergarten students who are like my 6th graders, right? And they missed 3 or 4 months of, closing up elementary school. And there's a lot that we're noticing just as a building, as a group of 18 6th grade teachers, that we're like looking at our 6th graders a lot differently this year. And so how do we work with that learning loss from last year and really look at this year as, I look at it as a thoughtful reactionary year, and next year as a recovery, or a part of that recovery process.
Certainly, that's what we're all hoping. Mr. Gutierrez mentioned, post-COVID. Those are my 2 favorite words put together. That's something that use as a reality sooner rather than later. One of my questions that you just talked about, Mr. Dennis, was how are the faculty holding up? And so I'd like to kind of hear a little bit of feedback, not really specific, but just some general understanding of how folks are going. We're in October. I was remarking the orchestra playing the video. They sound really good. They're kind of ready for the concert, at least the winter concert. But it has only been a month and a half. But I think the tea leaves are there. You can kind of see where we're going. So how's that going? Anyone, please.
I'll be totally honest with you. At my opening faculty meeting in September, I got choked up. I could not thank my faculty and staff enough for every single thing that they did over the summer, much of it on their own time, without pay, coming in to help get our schools ready for our students. They were phenomenal. There's no question in my mind that they are thrilled to be back and be in front of kids. They have rolled with every single adjustment, hiccup, change, and shift that we had to make with grace. And certainly, you know, if there's anybody from the Glen Head staff watching tonight, you have to know how very proud I am because they've been outstanding.
Teachers are my heroes. They have been always. Myself as a learner, this year has emphasized that everything you saw in that video for all our schools, speaking specifically to the high school, if you think back to the conversations we were having when I had just started at the district and we opened, is the air safe? Will we have thermometers? Will we have tents? And we're asking teachers who themselves are scared to sit to the equivalent to being inside to be with kids all day. And to put those fears to the side and focus on teaching. That's a big ask. They rose to the occasion. At the high school specifically because they are working on making sure that the asynchronous days have resources. The teachers are exhausted. They're working harder than they've ever worked before. They go from class to preparing for the asynchronous. Students go back to class to preparing for the asynchronous students. My heart goes to them. They're making it happen, but I want to make sure that they're going to be okay. Because every day I go home and I ask myself, how are they feeling? Are they okay? Because they are really working harder than they've ever worked before. And they're doing it, but it can take a toll. And I just want to be honest about that.
And like we're saying, there's to some degree some adrenaline in the beginning, where it's a challenge, and you're answering it. And then, as we all know from various experience we've been in, they meet the call, they answer the bell, and then now it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then you get a brief break and you're doing it again, week after week after week, and that can become harder than answering that initial bell, which at this point absolutely recognizes the huge effort that our faculty have made, and our staff in general as well. But those faculty who have had to rethink so much of what they've done and figure it out, and roll the sponges, and figure out how to work new technologies and new how to operate Windows they never had to open, how to answer emails, how to deal with kids remotely, how to all these different things. Taking kids out of the rain, turning into a learning experience. But my concern is as we move into sort of the dog days, as days get shorter and grayer, and they're leaving in the dark sometimes, how they're holding up. So that's not necessarily an answer for this minute, but I want to be clear, that is a concern of this board. We recognize everyone has the potential to be there's a point of exhaustion, and there's a point of post-exhaustion, and that's when you really can start to see diminishing returns. So it's a concern.
When you asked about the teachers, the first thing I wrote down was their SEL needs. Like, we're making sure that our children are really getting their social emotional needs met, but our teachers need that too. I think that one of the things that's been amazing, and I think that many of us have many reassigned teachers who maybe haven't been in a classroom for a while or are teaching something that they got certified in but never taught before. And I will say they are resilient and they have been amazing. And then people who have, the other teachers who are on the grade levels who have stepped up to be their mentors, that collaboration amongst teachers has been great. I mean, every reassigned teacher in my building, there's 6 of them, all they do is talk about how their colleagues have helped them. And they've taken this, and been really positive about it. So it's been really kind of joined the building together in a way that's never happened before. I think that they've been creative. One of the grade levels made an appointment with me today, though. They are fearful. They're fearful of going remote and not being ready for it. And they want to do the right thing. They want to make sure their kids keep learning. They're so happy to be back, but they're so fearful that, as the flu and cold season comes out, that we may end up having to go remote for more than a day, maybe 2 weeks. And they're starting to get their materials together. They need some time to do that. So that's what I've heard, especially today, just getting and making sure that they do a better job than they did in the spring, because they took the feedback that they got from parents, from all the surveys, they saw all of that, and they want to do a better job than they did in the spring. And they do have some PD that we've already given them, but they just need a little time to get those materials together.
Building on what Trustee Jones mentioned at the beginning of this, keep us in mind and letting us know what you think facilitating the outcome. Are there other trustees who have?
I just follow up on something, two things that you said. It's interesting that they don't want to change the exams. But I was thinking about it, you think about construction and how these exams are norms. If most of the schools are only teaching 80% of the material, then when they go to score the exams, the norming changes. So in other words, maybe if there are 100 questions, normally 100 would be top score, but now you're gonna have less people getting that, so it shifts the whole scoring system. The second thing is, of course, I mean, you all know my philosophy. Of course, I am all about adapting the curriculum and the standards to meet the mental health needs of the children, right? Because if the teachers feel pressure to teach a certain amount of material, they're going to push that pressure down on the students, and then nobody learns anything. The one part that I just want to caution, which is just what I want to mention, is that there is a difference between delaying reading skills in a child who does not have a learning disability and those that do. And children who have underlying learning disabilities, we need to make sure that we are aggressively screening them right away so that we can provide proper intervention because of the plasticity of the brain. So I want to make sure, at the meeting actually talk about this, that we're using the right screeners for dyslexia. So I believe we're using more like Wilson screeners and Dibbles and there are better instruments out there that can actually identify dyslexia at the age of 5. So I think now more than ever, if there are children who are borderline, if those children are not getting enough reading intervention early on because of the pandemic, they're going to have much more problems later on. So.
I just want to address that because I wholeheartedly, and I think we all wholeheartedly agree with that. I think those students were at the priority of those who were chosen for AIS to begin with and to be screened initially and have already with that service, as soon as we started. We do use the WIST, which is part of that dyslexia screener. It is one that goes into the different aspects of dyslexia, whether it's the different types, and there are other more in-depth screenings that and tests that assess for that, but it does take a trained professional to do those things. But I would say that was at the priority of students who needed to be screened and had service delivered to. So we just want to assure you that I could speak for the elementary level, that was specifically what we focused on when we looked at students who had underlying disabilities or needs.
So like the gold standard would be things like the CTOPS, would be things like Shaver's dyslexia screening.
Right, that's the FAR, the FAR, yeah, those are some intensive screenings, or assessments.
I could follow up on that idea of reading just at the middle level. So we administered the STAR assessment to, I believe at this point, all 6th and 7th graders. I don't remember if all 8th graders have taken it yet. And a concern that I have is, we have appropriately placed all students who we knew in June needed reading, whether we articulated with the elementary schools and about those new 6th graders, and then certainly the 7th and 8th graders that we have had in our school. So all kids who as of June need reading are getting it. A concern that we're starting to wonder about when we're looking at the STAR data is, will there be surprises? Will there be kids who do need reading services? And at this point, I don't have, there might not be room for them, right? Because our rooms are so prescriptive in terms of the number of students who can come into the classroom. And there certainly is an element of, is there a teacher available to do that? I don't predict that it's going to be many students who we missed, because teachers are very good at articulating and diagnosing reading needs. But in the area of English language arts and reading, I do have a concern that we might find students who were not anticipating needing support, and now we're going to be very creative, figure out what to do, but we want to make sure that they're going to get everything that they need.
And for the high school, I just want to share that I've been sitting with Mr. Kissinger and Ms. Imperial, the assistant principal, to find seats for students who have needs right now to come in for both cohort days. And when there's space, why not have the student sit in that seat? So we're in the process of identifying those seats and then reaching out to families and saying you can come in for both cohort days. To the first question about you're correct. I think that they may or may not make adjustments for the exams. Like, so if everyone struggles, they have to curb it, right? Well, hopefully. And I agree with you. And I think the challenge around that is that it would be a lot fairer and kinder and supportive of students' SEL if there could be transparency on the beginning end, instead of teachers teaching everything to see what gets curved and how it gets curved, and that's the challenge. So I'm hopeful. So I'm hopeful that with sufficient advocacy across districts and principals speaking up and superintendents making their voices heard for the different exams, that the systems will be responsive, because it doesn't help anyone.
It sounds like we probably should come to a decision on this and not wait for them to make the decision. Because if answers come in March, it's too late. Well, in other words, what we're going to do in terms of the curriculum.
So, it's not early anymore. I don't want to do a hard cutoff here, but I think trustees, if they haven't asked questions that are really burning, we speak up now. But I think otherwise, you guys have been very, in a good way, frank, and in a good way, which is a bad way to be thoughtful. You've been very thoughtful, and really sharing with us a lot of perspectives that we didn't have. So I appreciate it, the board appreciates it. The trustees who want to raise issues that haven't come up yet, that are pressing. Well, again, I really thank you for the video. We're all going to remember that, and for your time today. And we are certainly aware that talk about students, talk about teachers. We know that you're also under a lot of pressure and stress, and we recognize that. We appreciate your time and the work you've done in a very big way. That is very clear. You want to retrieve a mic? Is it? Okay.
Good night.
So the next item, thank you, the next item on our agenda this evening is comments from the public. Is anyone from the public who has comments? Microphone. Please. The only requirement we have is that you state your name and town of residence. And again, welcome.
Thank you, Dave. I'm Maria Mosca from Seacliff. I can't believe I'm my parents here. I'm so sorry that hundreds missed this amazing evening.
I have one,
Maria, I'm sorry, before you, just as much as possible as you're hearing us, just get right up in there. If you can turn the dial and volume up a little bit.
How's that?
That is much better, thank you.
First time ever, nobody hears me. I have a very loud.
I didn't want that to be the case.
I'm Maria Mosca, I'm from Seacliff. I have one, what do you call this? You know, something I'd like to hand around for each of you. May I hand it today? I need to take a moment to explain that the picture itself is completely unimportant. I'm just showing you the paper. I also need to take a moment to echo what you all said about the principals. I know they're all gone, but that presentation was unbelievable. Not just because of the work they're doing, but because of the work you're doing. And these are not part of my prepared remarks, but I just want to say a very, very heartfelt thank you. As a parent in this district, I am just floored by what we're accomplishing, what you are accomplishing, what they are accomplishing on behalf of my daughter and the children of all the parents who, frankly, I wish they were all here. It was just made me feel so proud and happy to be living in this district. So thank you very, very much. The discussion was also amazing because it presaged so much of what I'm going to say. Sorry, I will perhaps bore you with it because I am going to read it because I prepared it. But I'm so happy that I heard a lot of comments that really warmed my heart about people, the principals wanting to continue outdoor learning / time. I liked that term that Mr. Dennis made, even post-COVID. So I hope that what I'm about to read can be taken in that spirit, that we need to be addressing not only right now, but the future, also with the knowledge of how hard everyone is already working. So this is just an appeal for letting loose on the forward thinking that we have obviously, that you have all been leaders in showing we can do it. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your extraordinary and tireless good work for our district. This is an understatement tonight. My name is Maria Mosca. I live in Seacliff and I have a 5th grader in Seacliff School. My remarks are on behalf of a small informal group of parents called Think Outside, because we are advocating for a way to do just that. Eyeglass wearers have to worry about them fogging up, sorry. We meet weekly, the Think Outside group meets weekly to brainstorm ideas and explore many aspects of outdoor learning. With children at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, we greatly appreciate that our district has implemented outdoor learning to some extent in each building, and we recognize how fortunate we are to have in-person learning at all at this time. That said, we have noted that outdoor learning has been implemented differently at each building, often deliberately, of course. We have also noticed that it appears very teacher-dependent. Some classes go outdoors frequently, while others do not. We believe that all students and teachers should have equal access to outside, which science tells us is the safest option and our best hope of sustaining in-person learning throughout the school year. We've been encouraged by some of the comments we've heard at recent board meetings, including reports of up to 2 hours daily outdoor time after the 6-hour school day, and a stated goal of increasing that to 50% of the school day. And we enthusiastically support the addition of HEPA filters to help address classroom air quality, along with all the other efforts that are ongoing to improve our filtration systems. However, we are deeply concerned about the approach of winter and the effect the cold weather may have on the outdoor learning program. The time our students are currently spending outdoors is already at frequent risk of cancellation, even in mildly inclement weather. We fear that without additional preparation and a change in mindset, a full retreat indoors is inevitable once the daytime temperatures drop much lower. If this happens, students and teachers will be spending long, uninterrupted hours in their classrooms, including time without masks for eating snack and lunch. We know from all reliable studies that this creates a significant risk for higher transmission of the virus, even with the addition of HEPA filters, which we hope will be in place by that time. All this considered, I am here this evening to ask you to give serious priority to considering a range of low-cost, logistically viable actions to be taken in the short term. These measures would also be in support of a long-range strategic plan that would position our district for the very real possibility of future widespread outbreaks. The goal of these efforts is to move the needle significantly closer to the capability of a district-wide, full-day, year-round outdoor learning environment as quickly as possible. We request that you quickly establish a task force, or whatever you'd like to call it, to identify obstacles to achieving this goal and recommend solutions for fast implementation as well as phased planning. The task force would review obstacles you foresee from NICEAD regulations, the physical limitations of our campuses, the safety and financial concerns of our community, and other barriers you and others might suggest. Even without a clear understanding of those hurdles, we have been studying and brainstorming potential solutions, and we ask that the task force considers a range of possibilities, such as the following: installation of wind barriers on existing fenced areas, use of customized greenhouse structures with their built-in heat gain capabilities, assigned outdoor spaces for every class, easily portable classroom supply transports for teachers, specific vendors and potential bulk discounts for outdoor supplies such as weatherproof furniture, learning tools, and outerwear for teachers and students. The paper that I sent around for you to look at is just an example, one tiny example of a waterproof paper that actually had that specific sheet of paper, which to my eyes looks very in incredible condition, almost brand new, has been hanging on the fence at the Seacliff School Garden for close to 4 months in all weather, not covered under any canopy. And it's like I just printed it. Parent and education program, this is just a few more bullets of what we're hoping you will consider. Parent education programs on the benefits of outdoor learning, partnerships with our various PCA, PTO organizations and the coordinating council, and last but not least, lobbying efforts with NICEAD and or the Board of Regents for fast-tracked regulation review and modified guidance. The list goes on and on. Needless to say, we are eager to share our findings, which only begin to scratch the surface. Practical and cost-effective solutions exist, but time is of the essence. In exactly 5 weeks from today, we will be celebrating Thanksgiving, a cherished family holiday that has the sad potential to challenge everyone's willpower to keep socially distant. As such, it is also a marker for the timeliness of this issue and the urgency with which we must focus on thinking outside. Thank you very much for your time and patience.
Thank you. Maria, if you want, you could, I don't know if you want to email a copy of that, or if you want to give a copy to the clerk to enter the record.
I do have one extra I can give extra. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We did receive 2 emails for public comment from the public. The first one is from Joanne Liu from Seacliff. Thank you for the tremendous efforts of the board, the administration, teachers, and staff to reopen our schools safely this fall. It has been a semester like no other in recent memory, and I appreciate the difficulty of ensuring a quality education for our children while maneuvering through changing recommendations and priorities as they evolve. As the year continues and we begin to solidify what the new normal looks like for learning in the district, I urge you to continue taking a creative approach to the challenges facing traditional classroom learning at this time. I believe that with these challenges comes an opportunity to rethink previous approaches in a productive way, including one, expanding curriculum and exposure to alternate narratives and perspectives to help students better understand issues of racial justice and equity as they relate to current events and the complexities of history. Two, expanding outdoor learning in a way that is developmentally appropriate and beneficial to the student body while mitigating risks of infection and the spread of the COVID-19 virus. I fully support all efforts to use this moment of change to expand these types of opportunities in the district. And I respectfully request that the administration and Board of Ed allow opportunities for parents to stay informed and involved in the process.
We have a second letter from Rebecca Marcus of Glen Head. I'm writing as a follow-up to my last two letters to the board about the high school hybrid experience. 2 weeks ago, I expressed my concern about the amount of time our high schoolers are spending on their computers on remote days. In these intervening weeks, I have witnessed the video lessons become longer and the workload grow even heavier. I would like to ask to please consider reducing the recorded lesson time, or at the very least, the amount of homework assigned on remote days. North Shore should be proud of its commitment to academic excellence, but greater quantities of homework and screen time should not be mistaken for academic rigor. I believe the opposite is achieved. Hours of homework and passive viewing of recorded lessons undermine student engagement, working against our district goals. I am absolutely encouraged by some of the teachers' creativity with the remote component, but those efforts too often get drowned out by the hours of recorded lessons and the seemingly endless quantity of homework assigned on remote days. I beg you to intervene immediately. Reducing or even discontinuing homework on asynchronous days would have a quick positive impact on all students. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. So again, to the public who's watching, we absolutely appreciate hearing from you. If you do email the Board of Ed, either for public comment or just in general, all 7 trustees and the superintendent certainly read those, and it does help us understand what folks are thinking. I did want to highlight one thing. A couple of years ago, there was a very large effort to rewrite the strategic plan for our district, and one of those pillars, and I serve on the committee along with some other folks here, and one of the pillars that we came up with on the equity component, which I'll read because I think it speaks to something that Joanne spoke about, is given that a culture of connection and a sense of belonging are foundations for a healthy school community, we will build a safe environment that emphasizes acceptance, equity, inclusivity, cultural competency, and a respectful, open exchange of ideas for all learners. And so I think that really does follow up on what was highlighted in that letter as a goal. And the fact that it's codified in our strategic plan is important. And of course, we need to keep working towards making that prominent in our buildings. Absolutely. Okay. Very well. We'll move on to the portion of our meeting. So I'm going to have the microphone here. Action item B, our personnel. Do I have a motion? Are there any questions on this section? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action C, approval of budget. Well, I'm sorry, Lydia, I do want to take this opportunity, but I want you to get right in there with that mic. I want to make sure we don't miss a word.
Yeah, I wanted to take this opportunity that is being spoken for all the service she's provided weekends, Sundays, and she's always with me through this journey. And I really, really appreciate what she's doing so much. And I'll miss her.
I appreciate that. The board certainly agrees. She's been a tremendous asset to the district. And I'm very glad you didn't let me go too fast, because I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you. Thank you, Janet. And good luck. She has lot ahead of ourselves, which I know is exciting. Action item C, which is the approval of our budget transfers in the amount of $103,380. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action item D, approval to dispose of inventory, which are some outdated computer servers and a printer at the high school. Motion?
Motion.
And a second? Okay, got one. Thank you. Questions on the disposal? All in favor?
Aye.
Action E, approval of a change order from Preferred Construction for capital project at North Shore High School. Motion?
Motion.
Second? Thank you. Any questions on this one? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action item F, approval of an agreement between North Shore Central School District and Greg Alquist to provide 2 days of professional development working with our social studies teachers. Motion? And a second? Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Action item G, approval of an agreement between North Shore and the Hagedorn Little Village School to provide educational, instruction, and services. Do I have a motion? Second? Good. Any other questions or comments? Good here. Call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Action item H, approval of agreement between North Shore and Building Bridges Educational Consultants. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Action I, approval of agreement between North Shore and Triborough Driver Rehabilitation and Mobility Services. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Any questions or comments? This is providing services for students who are differently able to personal driving.
That's right. So we normally have 1 or 2 students a year who need an adapted driver's ed experience. And so we're based on the schedule in their contract. There are individual rates that are hourly, and we access those events. So it's a contract that we keep on handy. We know, we think we have 1 student right now who will benefit from this, but there might be. To jump into this, so this is a new vendor. We could use a different vendor. Yeah. This is a new vendor.
And the contract's written so we can be scalable.
Correct.
For students. Good. Any other questions on this one? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Action item J, approval of the special ed IEPs. Do I have a motion? Second, thank you. Any questions on these?
I'd like to make a comment.
Please.
Once again, I'd really like to thank Chris Marino for spending very valuable time, generous time, but the IP plan, we have a question to clarify. He's 1 person down in his department, very important role as assistant director, and he was great honesty, he had good humor, and the department is very family-based. I want to thank him for that. He's got his telephone number, and that says something about an individual and how they feel their role. School district is this particular time. I really appreciate his work and his support.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, action item K, which is the acceptance of a very large donation from the Viking Foundation to the North Shore Central School District to be used for the purchase of HEPA filters. Do I have a motion? And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on this one? Yeah, this was a huge, huge effort. We have thanked you for the initiative in your superintendent's report. But I think that in 2 or 3 weeks, the generosity of Lisa putting her time into collecting this, generosity of Doug Weber and Maureen Denby running the Viking Foundation to put this together, the entire Viking board. But their efforts were to facilitate the generosity of the overall community, which has been very impressive and quick to respond. We think about, we heard tonight what the teachers have done, what our faculty has done, what our kids have adapted. We all know that parents and families play a huge role in that, but to see them actually spring into action in this way at all levels is inspiring. And so it's really been amazing. And as we talk about combating the cold weather and decreased opportunities to go outside, that's the bill. So I'm very glad to accept the donation. And I hope everyone agrees with me. We're going to have a vote on this. There's no other discussion. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Sticker, by the way, Cheryl says 119,000.
That's amazing. So the goal was 130, and it all came together very quickly.
And I will tell you that when I left my office to come here, it was not that.
Sorry, please get right into that, Mike.
It was like 118 and something. I thought I heard that.
That's great.
Like both boards, like Missouri,
No.
I can't imagine other schools have done them. It seems like an added layer, and we get one thing. Feels really good.
I do.
118, 414 at 6:15ish.
That is terrific. I do. We will move on to the business section of our meeting. We are open to business, but I think we should start with the bulleted finance and budget committee. Of all business.
So the board has asked Olivia and I to do some research on who has finance or budget advisory committees within the quadrant, within the county, and so research. Olivia then put some more feelers out on how those advisory committees generally work. So we've sent you all that board letter to look at that. And so where we are tonight is, if you have any questions, if you have any questions or reactions, or it feels like you need us to get you some more information, we'll just turn it back to you and you can direct that conversation. And Olivia we have the backup with us if we, some of them range from people don't have needs at all, to some of them are just simply advisory. Some of these committees get the budget after it's presented to the board. They don't have a they're not involved in the pre-part of it. Some of them are very involved in the pre-part of it. So really is you just have to figure out where some have a subcommittee of the board who is a finance committee. Functions in the same way that instructions here and some of your other boards. So we'll go right back to you.
Trustees, you want to weigh in?
I've looked at this from two perspectives. First of all, we shouldn't form a committee, just form a committee. No, it's not a committee, it's a committee. And it has to be purposeful. Right? So one of the things I'm then, that's the only part about the budget. How it's implemented. I'm wondering if well, what would be the budget plan? I don't really know. So, is there a document what we're providing to the residents to understand how we form a budget from the beginning? And also, in feasibly looking at, and this year is maybe this year is the year, because it's so different, it's so unpredictable. But certain things that are coming down, like, that decision and national government. And I mean, that's just good. Here, I think, you know, I agree that. I didn't get my reason. So, you know, all these part of the budget discussion, like we always are, from the beginning of February till May, or when we approve it, really not. But I would really like to draw in, because we've done that, engage the community on the process and have them understand our process better. And then maybe that, if we work towards that very early, we won't get sometimes this negative feedback as much as and again, this year was odd. This year was odd. But we still did, you know, we still heard some feedback about our going to the cap, COVID time, even though it's literally by week that we proved it and then we turned out. I am more to include the public in the theater, whether it be curriculum, wellness, and we have those committees who do enjoy resident participation. And they're very good. You know, I just really got involved in the discussion. I look for something like this, honestly, yes. Something we should think about going forward. I think Black plays a very important role in the next few years. With that, process and looking at different revenues in the state. But we would like to maybe reach out to people in our community that are in the financial world, economics, CPAs. It's something to consider. Maybe right now may not be the time. I think it's something that, and if you've had conversations with other directors of superintendents of business and how those particular, the context of how those particular communities were formed, mostly there's some issue in that community that prompted the formation of a finance and budget committee. That's helpful to know. So I also does have one, and we know that they have a lot going on there with the Sarah Wire property, survey issues, IBA type agreements. So they've got developments that are being built there. So I believe they have one. Might be in their committee might be connected with construction. Their construction committee as well. Their facilities. But it would be interesting to know for what reason those, and they were ad hoc at one time. So they served the purpose at one time, and I'm wondering if they fulfill the purpose or cause more problems or. When I talked to some of the business officials, there was a process that it was very interesting. In some school districts, it's a cross section because they wanted to send it. Within PTA, people still have different ideas. People in the financial world. Everybody was trying to panel ideas, and they may not be representative. They have parents of people in their grade, they have parents of kids who have graduated. So it's a process in some areas is still towards people in the financial industry. So we have to think about this in a very careful way so that it reflects our full value at this point. And I think that is something that I continue to say. And what I also see is that sometimes because they have to follow all their decisions through the board, sometimes they are not as active as they should be. So what can we do? Even if we want to do it, what can we do to instill that creativity and enthusiasm in them so that they continue to provide us with the information that we need to build our budgets? I'm very happy that the principals were here to talk about all these new initiatives because of our community. Yeah, I will all know. It's a real point. Those initiatives are very exciting, but they so our guys in this district are pursuing this particular mode going forward. Where are we gonna, we know we're already kind of looking through the process of some revenue issues. Are we gonna get our aid back at 20%? These are big questions. And I feel like you hold all these answers, and you share them with us. I would love to know more. And then I harken back to the bond from 2013. It brings together so many people from the community in a variety of areas. Really, great on, that's on. Like turn that into the giant wish list of what we could say, like with something, entrepreneurs, if you have anything, you know, with that, and then we look at that, $19.20 million. Yeah, I mean, I was so happy that you mentioned the contract this year. It's very tricky. From one day to the other, you don't know what to find. And so, before we have to with what we do, and we have to do it. How do you do it in the very right way? See that there's my own and everything. I mean, what I begin to do with it, it's up to a lot. So this is something that we have to discuss. And he just provided us with the information about human reimbursement. We may not receive what we thought we were going to receive. But we've already said this is reopening of the way we have. So, have to do some more thought on where we're going in the budget season coming up. I know you probably have everybody working on that as well. I think we're going to be in for a lot of work this season as a group. Those are definitely kind of
I have a different perspective. I think this would be stated is why this is an ideal time for a budget and finance committee. I don't think it should be exclusively focused on the budget. I think it should be also focused on long-term strategic planning, knowing that we have these factors coming down, knowing that this whole pandemic has put on the budget that we didn't anticipate, put stress on the reserves. You have, we talked about the bond. We're going to have bond anticipation notes. We have the ECC. We have the stresses that we know about. The shifting of the tax base to the lifetime. We have all these developments going in, and what kind of development. And unless we are exercising great oversight on that, that could be a problem. So I think there are long-term problems that are coming forward that it would be good to gather whatever expertise and varying perspectives we have in the district and to do some long-term strategic financial planning, not just this year's budget, but the budget, what is the budget going to look like 5 years from now? Someone may do projections, you know, when I have a fund, we do projection one fund as to their solvency and what. So I think we're selling ourselves short, not taking advantage of what we may have right in our doorstep. And then when you're talking about public engagement, the more people we bring into the committee and into the process, every person don't talk to another person or another 20 people, and they may engage those people in the budget process. So the more we make it, I think, budget and financial planning a more integrated into the community, that you'll have less resistance, and I think you're going to see more interest. And I also think that right now people are under a lot of financial stress. Businesses are going under. People are losing their jobs. Their incomes are going down. I mean, anyone has been fortunate, but I think overall we're kind of at and stock market and the worry that we've had a very unstable couple of years in the stock market, up and down, up and down, up and down. Thank God overall it's not. But I think the financial outlook as we are coming we're still in this pandemic, how we come out of this pandemic is very worrisome, and we don't know what next year is going to bring to finances. And I think allowing people to participate in the process would be helpful, and maybe give them some feeling of control and some avenue to express either their positive and negative concerns, what they can do, and different options.
Trustee thoughts on this? So I think these are good points that we made. I think about the chart and the information that Olivia was providing, which I appreciate. It seemed like of the ones you were able to get information from, about half, a little, it was 12 out of 26 that had the committees. And of the one, and some had them and then left, and some had them, and there was a burst of energy at the beginning, and then it kind of faded. But I guess I'd like to learn more about specifically what they're doing at the places where they have them, and how it works. Because I think, Olivia, what you said is very apt, which is we have to make sure that the way that we utilize this committee, if we go in this direction, aligns with our district values and how we run, how we manage this district. Of the roles that we have as trustees, fiduciaries of the community's money is certainly at the very tippy top. And so I would want to know how to bring together the knowledge base that our community certainly has, people who are aware of not just the financial side, but also the greater economic issues and trends and whatnot, how that will be reflected in our decision making, because I worry about transparency in that aspect, and then bringing people in is always helpful. Getting more information is always helpful, but I also know that predicting where we're going and the economy and where things are going, not that we don't have great talent in this community, but you could bring the Nobel Prize winners in economics together in a room. I don't think they'll come out with a consensus white paper on where we should be, because I think you need a crystal ball for that more than knowledge. because, there's just so many different factors. But I think there's some questions I'd like to see of how it actually works in those places, and how they function, how they add to what the board is working. That said, a separate issue, Lisa, related, but also separate issue, Lisa brought up, I could not agree with more, that there is opposition to the decisions of this board, with regard to the budget, that seemed to me could be abated to some degree if we had more participation from the community in the process, more involvement in seeing how we deliberate. We have these elections, our budgets have been approved by strong numbers by the community, which I think we, as a board, we are pleased with. But I think we would certainly be more pleased with more folks being aware and feeling like a lot of the questions they had could be answered, and they could be somehow brought more into the process somehow. I think we struggle as a board of how to do this with the bond. We had a bond just before bond proposal, before Peter came on board. We decided that it was not right to proceed at that time. But one of those reasons was we didn't feel we had great community input on the bond. And so we sort of started from scratch, came up with the bond process, and we really have did try to bring in a lot of voices from the community in on that. And we had some success, but I also know that it wasn't as much as we would have liked. I know we sat at meetings where trustees and members of the community there, which seems really awkward. There were trustees, Olivia, Peter, two members of the community sitting there. And we're like trying to, you feel like it's how much so what we have to do is 4 of us sitting there, 6 of us sitting there. But I would love to open the way to bring more people in. One of my first involvements with anything having to do with this district was the previous superintendent pulled together a superintendent's council. With the specter of LIPA hitting us in a huge immediate way was upon us. And the question to the community was, what happens if this really is? There is no glide path, there is no abatement, there is no aid, and we are just experiencing a huge gutting of our budget. What can we do to either raise revenue or cut our costs? And there were, I believe, about 200 people participated in that. And they came together and they looked at the budget together in small groups. First time I ever met you, Sarah. You were my group leader, and thanks. And it was a very collaborative event. Saw that, and it brought people into the process. I think bringing people into the process, whether or not that's done through a committee, but the concept of bringing people into the process that you outlined, Lisa, is a priority for me. I think that's part of what transparency is, and that's part of the way we make those good decisions by bringing people in.
I really agree with you. One thing I think that we would have to be careful about is which way the information flows. So if we had a committee, we would want their expertise to come through. And I think we would have to be really careful that they then did not communicate information to the public, because I think the budget and the finances are very complex, and you have a committee of 10 people, you have to make sure that it's distorted to the community, because then you have major problems. So one advantage of us maintaining control over how information is disseminated, I think really have to think about.
I agree with that. I think that how that's working on the other districts is key. I also would like to know if we have, sometimes. So I was on LAC, and we did a very large project having to do with making an appeal to Albany for a different state aid type calculation. We did a huge amount of work on that, and LAC did a great job, had great brain power. I won't name names, although it's all complimentary, but they presented something to the board, and the board said, we really appreciate the study you put together, but we're not going to proceed with this because we don't think, it's the direction we want to proceed. And the committee has to be okay with it all. And then when it's finances, you know, people have, as much as people have opinions about lack of legal related issues, certainly when it comes down to pocketbook issues, people have very strong, very personal feelings about those things. And we don't want to be in a situation where the board is either following the direction of the subcommittee that is an arm of the board, or it looks even more tone deaf, less open. So I'd like to hear how they deal with it.
I think you're arguing against board subcommittees, because all board subcommittees are advisory and the information goes out, and they go in with the understanding that they are advisory, and at the end of the day, the ultimate decision is the board. But often what we find when we put subcommittees together, or when we put community members on the subcommittee, that they bring talent and information and ideas that we have not considered. And I don't think that finance should be any different than any other committee where we tap into those talents and have those ideas funnel up to us. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we are the final we are the final arbiters of what we think is appropriate and what we think is not appropriate. And that does not mean we don't consider and value what a subcommittee member says. We just say maybe now is not the right time, or that's a great idea, but for these reasons. And I don't think that should make anyone feel devalued, because there's no way we're not going to take something positive as a subcommittee.
I mean, that's the purpose of a well articulated charge to that committee. We have bylaws and we have objectives, and then what the board asks the committee to do, and they report that to the board. They serve at our pleasure. So if that is all fine at the outset, then we're responsible for communicating out to the committee. We use good judgment, and hopefully members will use good judgment. And I think this needs to be clear and concise all the time. Yet again, it is committee needs to be perfect.
Yes, because we all know that the existence of a committee in and of itself creates to prepare, to meet. I mean, today we sent emails, which is typical and important. You have multiple people, but I think before we put it together, we should make sure so.
Right, because this would be, lots of committees, but this would be particularly high stakes, given that there is a community vote for a budget. So whatever you do, you can't jeopardize passing a budget.
I don't think you're doing that at all. I think you're creating more transparency and helping pass the budget by having community members involved in the process and not having it as an insular process. And Lisa, you sent me the bylaws for East Wilson. I mean, I'm sure there are bylaws out there. I mean, I've written bylaws for health rights bylaws for LAC. I mean, those are, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. They're pretty easy to do. So I think that, especially when you're in a situation where there are a lot of economic pressures going on, the more ideas you have circulate, more information you get, the better decisions you make. And that may not mean, and that does not mean we have to adopt this wholeheartedly, but to me, it's about transparency, it's about openness to other ideas, it's about long-term planning, it's about tapping into the resources and getting that flow of information up to the board. I don't see the downside of having community members involved, and I think we benefited in every instance where we put community members on our subcommittee.
And I think that's a good point, that our community members have benefited, we've benefited from having community members added to our subcommittees. But again, we've always had the subcommittee first, understood the value of it, and then benefited from that expanded point of view. I think to Andrea's point, the community does have a very clear say in our budget through the election of us as trustees. That is the primary way that they influence us. We certainly have had elections with different perspectives, and that is the traditional way that something this magnitude is reflected in our board, in our community, in our democracy. So I think that's an important aspect as well to remember.
And just to be clear, I don't disagree with the idea of the committee, I just think we have to be super careful.
Sure.
Moving forward.
I agree, I'm not opposed to it either. I just want to learn more about what it would be before we, I want to look really carefully before we jump. Right? So I think, the administration has some ideas and questions we have, how this can work.
So what I'm hearing is of the 12 districts at least that we've identified here, we'll get some information on how they function, the bylaws, how they meet, what they're charged with doing, what their role is. We'll put, Olivia and I will put together a set of general parameters for you, and then we'll start working.
Would it be appropriate to reach out to North East School District considering that they've just been through a very, very significant, continuing to be impacted by their own particular life situation?
No, not at all.
They're a way bigger school district than we are.
No, not. I actually think that's a good idea. It would also probably be a good idea to reach out to Fort Jefferson as well, because they were impacted by that. So let's reach out to those two specific people.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, we have our election.
Is there other old business?
Yeah, just one thing. With regards to the June 18th minutes, I mean, we did not approve those the last time we voted, and it's probably something that we should put back on an agenda, and I guess deal with them with however we deal with any minutes, any suggested changes, or whatever. But we need to act on those at some point.
I agree.
Are we required to act on them? We've already voted on them and it didn't pass. So are we, I just really need to talk to council about whether we can vote on them again after they did not pass, whether that's appropriate and now a later date.
James, are you there?
So,
James.
Yes, I'm here. I'm having a little trouble hearing you, though. What was the question?
The question is, the June 18th minutes we had voted on once or possibly twice, and they did not pass. Tim has suggested as part of old business, that we revisit them on a future agenda. And Trustee Russo has asked if they are required to be revisited, or can they sit unapproved, indefinitely.
Legally, there's no legal requirement to approve minutes, but your policy may say something about that, so I'd have to look at your policy.
Is there a problem if a trustee would like to put them on the agenda for voting on again?
I mean, there's nothing that says you can or can't. So if a trustee wants to make a motion to put it on, certainly have the right to do that.
No, I was just, we have no formal, record of that meeting, right? And so in 100 years, right, when someone is, we have minutes for every meeting you have in the history of the school district. So we do need to have some kind of record of what happened
meeting right now. Ready? Yeah. So, I mean, did we approve tenure at that meeting?
I think it's the record, the minutes, pardon me, the minutes stand as the record. Whatever the minutes were, they are the record.
But if they're
It does not-
if
it doesn't
they're,
re-
are they anything?
sorry.
Sorry, James, if they're unapproved, then do they exist?
Yes, they still exist as the minutes because the minutes do not have to be approved by the board. So they are the minutes, but if there's some concern about whether they're accurate, a board member can make a motion to amend them, and then you guys can decide if you want to approve a revision. Unless that's done, whatever the minutes were when they were taken are the minutes of the meeting.
So let me just ask as a follow-up, James, what is the purpose of us approving minutes at every meeting?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of boards like to do that. They like to have the ability to review and correct or amend the minutes, but it's not a requirement, but it is something many boards do because they'd like to have an opportunity to review and check that they are accurate.
Yeah, in terms of best practices for Robert's rules, that certainly is something that is a tier one inclusion of any parliamentary event.
No, I agree. It's just that the education law itself, I don't believe per se requires board approval, but it is good practice, and most boards do try to approve the minutes.
Okay. Are there any other perspectives on this? Does anyone feel that we should or shouldn't have this as part of our record, that it matters or doesn't matter to you?
I would not be in favor. I mean, I think the vote is the vote.
But as I said, it's open to an amendment, so it would be, it's perhaps voting on a different set of minutes. The minutes as they were written were not approved.
I don't know why we would revisit something that's already been acted on by the board. The vote is the vote, the minutes are still the record of the meeting as they are, and I don't think we should go down that road.
So these will, if we don't proceed with this, then these minutes will exist in the record as unapproved draft minutes in the annals of time. Yeah, please, Betty.
So I have an additional.
Okay. Okay.
So in that official minutes.
So James, I'm gonna reiterate for you, because Betty doesn't have a mic, we're a little short on mics today. Betty has an official book of minutes that is, incredibly permanent. Apparently it's indestructible, or rather it shouldn't be destroyed. And the question is, and that is, you know, like your family Bible back from the old country, you just carry it with you forever. The question now becomes, is this part of that record if we don't revisit it?
I'm taking a look at your policy on minutes, and it says after a draft is approved by the board, such minutes shall constitute the official record of the proceedings of the board. Minutes which have not been approved by the board within 2 weeks of the meeting shall be marked draft.
So they go to the vote as draft or unapproved minutes. They could still go in the book.
Yeah, I believe they go in the book, but they will be marked draft if they have not been approved by the board.
This is not, oh, sorry.
James, I'm just, is it possible to, what I'm thinking when you say they don't have to be approved is because minutes only have to be the action taken by the board. So obviously, the action taken by the board
would be something that would go into the official book. And the question and the reason that the minutes were approved was because of comments and not because of the official action taken by the board. So would it be appropriate to just put in the official minutes book the action taken by the board, such as granting the tenure?
I mean, the minutes should reflect the actions taken by the board. That is the most important thing. But if it contains other information, you know, if that's how they were drafted, they go in the minutes as well. If that's been how you prepare your minutes, whatever the minutes were that were presented to be approved, but were never approved, those are the draft minutes, and that's how they're maintained.
So I would make the argument that when this board spends time discussing minutes, it's generally not our most productive time. It's something we've always done. I'm inclined to have a complete record, and go there. It's certainly better at the tail end of a meeting, like we're having this discussion now. But I still think that it is something that I don't feel completely settled with this not being part of our record in a more formal way. That said, I'm not going to press the issue. I don't know if you want to press the issue, Marianne.
I'm not gonna press it. It was something that I saw as unresolved. And that there were actions taken on there that are very important to anyone who's ever become a teacher, to have that official record of having been granted tenure is pretty darn important. And so, you know, I know there's disagreement and, you know, over other aspects of the meeting, which I totally understand, and I respect that. I respect that tremendously. But it's also, there were other things that happened at that meeting that are important.
The record, whether it's draft or approved minutes, stands of the official action in the minute book. Listen, I've stated my position. I'm not gonna late. I would not be in favor, and I would vote against a motion to put those minutes back up again.
I'm inclined to agree with Tim in that I think it's important to have that complete, even if it's only formal. It does mean something for the other actions that have been taken at that point. I'm also not going to force any other trustee who has not weighed in on this issue to weigh in, but if anyone would like to say anything about their thoughts on this, either at this meeting right now or at a future old business, there are 7 of us, so it would theoretically be helpful if we had some other perspectives, but again, I'm not going to be putting anyone any more than by saying those words I just did.
I think based upon what James said, though, it is part of the record. So I hear what Tim is saying. I understand the sentiment there. But I think that legally, based upon what we were told, it's splitting hairs at this point. It is part of the official record of the board.
Exactly.
I think we're going to move on. Rich, thank you. I think we're going to move on. Stands to be, it'll continue to be old business if anybody wants to bring it up again at some point in the future. Is there any other old business? Is there any new business?
Dave?
Yeah, oh, sorry.
We're not doing committee reports tonight, right?
You know, it's a good question. It's not on here.
It's not on here, so I didn't think, so, and I thought we were, but it's not on here, but there was an issue at the construction hearing committee that came up that I would like to have a discussion on.
Okay.
As a board, so, doing the first phase, which in a large part is the middle school, it's also the front entry at the elementary school. What came up at the last construction steering committee meeting is that due to the addition of the air conditioning, that you're now going to need a new electrical service into the middle school, that needs upgrade, which means additional electrical service, bigger transformer, the new switch gear. You did not give us a price on that. Do we know what that's going to be, Olivia?
He gave us a rough estimate, but wasn't very definite. So we have to get a real number from him.
If we have to get a real number from him, and I would imagine that this is going to be a pretty significant number, that kind of equipment, and installing it, yes? So, the proposal is that the money is taken out of the capital reserve, but my question is a more technical question, because when we bid out the EPC, it included the air conditioning, was requested the air conditioning, and the ESCOs responded with their proposal regarding the air conditioning. Then we awarded the contract, and they did a whole analysis of all our buildings and what would be needed. It seems to me, and based upon some people I've spoken to in the industry, that the new electrical service, the upgrade to the electrical service, and the transformer and the switchgear is largely caused by the addition of the air conditioning included in the EPC, should have been a project that should have been recognized by the bidders on the contract. So I guess I have a couple questions, I have several questions, which is, do we need to have the construction council who helps us with the track look at the documents, the analysis done by the EPC, the presentation of what the EPC would involve, determine if there's any, if it really should have been something that should have been covered in the cost of EPC. If it is, what remedies do we have? Does it affect the calculation of the 18-year payback? And then if we come to the determination that that we have to pay for it, that it's not their responsibility to accept it, what we need to do to move the money, now need to have another vote in May on the movement of the money out of the capital reserve, because that's not something that is listed in the capital reserve or someone, or that we voted on.
Why don't we the phase one project budget had money in the bond?
I asked that question, I was told it's
No, it's in, no, I'm looking at it right here. So, in the phase one project budget, the electrical infrastructure upgrades to support the air conditioning are projected at $84,582. And then electrical infrastructure upgrades to support the additions and the renovation are listed at so the air conditioning is $84,582, and the electrical upgrades are $40,369. So I think that was I wasn't on the call when we had that discussion, but it's in the.
No, but this was what we were told. I know you weren't on the call. We were told that I have all my notes here.
I believe you. I'm just saying it's in
We
the.
were told that this is not something that was included, and that there this is outside, as I understood it, those electrical upgrades. This is a new service with a new transformer with new switchgear. That's the way it was explained. It's that in addition to, because I asked why aren't we taking it out of the bond money? And they said that even though overall we are under on the estimate for phase one of the bond, the middle school is a little over, and they didn't want to put it under the bond, because they wanted to save those monies going forward in case we needed it, and the best place to put the money is capital reserve. So, if this was not accounted for in the very beginning, I mean, listen, I'm not an engineer, I'm an attorney, but to me, when I thought about it for a while, and they did a whole analysis. They walked our buildings. They saw what our needs are. They put together this proposal. Why was this not? I mean, they knew what they were putting in and what the door would be, and they knew what our capability was in the building. Why was this not addressed in the $7 million contract that we went into for the EPC? Why weren't we advised of that?
I can certainly follow up on that. My understanding is that it's been the funding source. I will definitely follow up on it. I don't have that information. I don't have that.
No, I know you don't have that information tonight. That's why I'm asking the question.
But we'll follow up on it.
I understand that, but that was the way it was explained to us, Peter, because I asked a lot of questions about it.
All right, you know what would be helpful?
In addition to.
Hold on, please. It would be, I'll get just the answer. If you want to send me if you and I want to hop on a call tomorrow, we can talk more about this. Or you can email me all the details. I'll get you all the answers.
That's fine, but I asked Michael, I asked Fresh Meadow Mechanical when I described what the equipment was, and obviously he doesn't know the specs, but said something like that could be $500,000, not $84,000. So that's why I was wondering if we had some idea of what we're talking about, because that's going to play into all of this too, right? The dollars. So what I would like to know, we'll have this conversation, but if this is going to be a significant number, I think we really need to go back and look and see if this is just something that we should be part of our reserve fund, or something that we should be looking to someone else who should have put it in their proposal. Or maybe they should, I don't know. I'm not an engineer. But it just seems to me that when you're looking in detail at all of these systems, that this should have been something that we should not be surprised after we submitted our drawings to SED that we now need a new transformer and new electrical service and new switchgear. And I don't even know if that entails changes to the controls, which may or may not have been included in those numbers. I mean, to me, that's a pretty big mess. And I would like some more information on it. And I think the number is significant. Or should have more information on it, not just the first year.
Just if I could jump in, my notes reflect what Mary Ann is saying, that it was, I'll go through my notes, that it was discovered after the fact, even though it was all drawn up in advance, that there'd be much more of a draw, not just because of the changes they were making, but because of the physical addition of that space. And it's going to be a giant open space, a large open space, and that's going to really tax the electrical system that's currently there, and that it will no longer be sufficient or reliable. So the recommendation was that we have to make this change. The question was raised, why we realize it is now, and I would say that I also agree with Mary Ann. There was some frustration that that was not discovered earlier. I asked a specific question, are you 100% confident that this will not be a conversation we're having about the other 4 buildings in which we're doing work? Okay, and I was assured it was not. I asked if it would change the 18-year payback calculation. I was assured that it would not. And I also asked about the HEPA filters, if they would also, if adding something of that scope would affect anything. And I was told that it was the simple plug-in would not. So, the question of the funding for that project, once we know the scope of it, is something we should work out, because it does change. It depends, if it's very small, it doesn't change much.
I think we have to look at the resolution for the capital reserve. But it also has to do with running the Unifem. We are running the Unifem longer, and it's also because of the new addition at the middle school. Not necessarily the EPC. So we have to look at the whole story and put it all together.
Well, I'm saying it's because of the EPC and the Univent were part of, so that was the main part. What I'm saying to you is when the EPC was bid, right? And when the architects were looking at the plans as well, and the architects are working both for us, and they are supposed to be supervising the EPC, they knew there was gonna be a very big space. They knew they were gonna put in 10 air conditioners. They knew we were putting air conditioning through the capital reserve into large spaces. I don't know how they could have missed when they're looking at all of that, knowing what the scope of the project is, that you would not potentially need additional electrical service. And Dave, when you asked that question, and the answer was they didn't think so, but they were going back to all the buildings. I asked about the high school electrical work, and that was panel. It was not the feeder or the transformer. And the most recently upgraded building was the middle school for the transformer. Obviously, it was done at 2 times. Now, and I also have another question with that, because when that transformer was put in, I think it was 2002, was the date, I didn't like to see that. 2002, when the electrical service was upgraded. They said it was upgraded, I think 2002 at the middle school. Right?
It was a little later,
But somewhere in there, it was in the 2000s, right? We didn't have LED, it was just coming into being. We didn't have all these energy savings. So I know that like in big commercial buildings and construction, they put in additional electrical service for servers, for light bulbs, for people working more than 100 hours that are no longer necessary. So there's sort of a glut on electrical capability due to the LED. So it's somewhat surprising when they were looking at energy savings that could be achieved and air conditioning on the load. And that really seems to be the primary target. They have the running up the Univent's 24/7 part of it. The big draw was the addition and the additional air conditioning. To me, that is something that should have been analyzed by the architects and engineers and by the EPC, and that cost, if that cost should have been captured at the very outset. We should not be submitting something to SED and finding out that we need what could be a major expenditure. So maybe there was some discussion of it somewhere along the line. I don't know, but I know we're not going to resolve this tonight. What I'm asking is for that issue to be examined. And I would like someone to go back into the RFP documents and into the analysis presented by the EPC, into our initial estimates, and find out how the heck we missed this and whose obligation it is to pay for, because certainly the taxpayers didn't miss it.
I'm happy that James is on. James, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, all this information that we are talking about everything that we did was pre-COVID. And like I said, after the COVID happened, we've been running electrical system, even with the hyper focus that we were doing in the past, with the COVID. All those things are made a lot of electricity. So we have to have all those things at the back when we are calculating. But we'll get back to Darrell and calculating all these things where this appears. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Is there other old new business? Please.
Get extra points for children outside by measuring the rest of the field.
Metal tape measure can be a very dangerous tool if you use it properly. Any other new business?
I do. I noticed in our packet this week that included the New York State Department of Health COVID-19 in-person decision-making flow chart. I think it's very helpful piece of information here. We post this on our website. Do we have I know we've had a kind of a COVID section for a while with all your updates. I don't know if we have a separate, like district-wide health office.
Yeah, this is gonna go up. We're working on, that document can go up as soon as tomorrow, but we're working on a companion document to it. For our employees and mostly our employees, like in different scenarios. So we're trying to align, like, in this scenario, if I have this going on, what do I do? You know, how do I process that? So that's kind of in its couple of different iterations. We're working with council and Dr. Maria on that. So we can definitely go up as a public document, or, you know, from DOH. We were going to do it anyway, but there's some good helpful information.
So it's in the pipeline. I had asked Peter a question.
Sure.
I think this is Peter and Olivia about future costs of our HEPA filters. Always.
Yeah. Yeah. So the filters last about 5 years. The replacement on the filter is $275. Thank you. And so what we'll do is, you know, we'll get them in 2020. So as we get closer to, you know, 2025, and Olivia and I haven't talked about a strategy on how to do this, but we can either build our capacity for replacement like now, right? Because the value of replacing all the ones is about 100 grand. So we could build a line in the, you know, we could build a line in the budget and start to, you know, store them. But we'll talk through how to manage that. It's unlikely that they'll all.
A few of them on hand because we never know, right? Some of them may not reach the 5 years. No. Right. You want to be careful.
Yeah, so if we bought, you know, 30, 40 a year, you know, that sort of flatten that spiky.
With any luck, we'll have fewer sections. Rather post COVID. That would be great. Yeah. Okay, everyone all set? Okay, motion to adjourn? Thank you, everyone.